Good morning, Trumptopia! Let's get right to it, right, folks? I am your humble and often scatterbrained host, the incorrigible Mr. Zebo. This is Good Morning Trumptopia, your haphazard, if I can get my diction going, haphazard, unorthodox, anti-establishment, radical, underground, revolutionary, etc., lots of fancy words, absent-minded, ad hoc, unscripted, and despite myself being a fictional character, this show and my opinions presented therein are what I consider, as far as social media language might be used, 100% real AF or AF, depending on how you like to say it. As I finally got around to, in my last episode, describing what I think Trumptopia really is, it's a set of socio-political and economic paradigms, a complex of paradigms, a collection. It's an ideological construct that's been in operation here in good old America for a real long time. As I sort of scrambled to say at the end of the last episode, because I rambled way too long about something that belongs in another segment, Donald Trump and his cronies and his cadre, his political entourage, they are the product of this social conditioning. One of the really seductive ego traps that the system has put into play, and has for a really long time, is this attention deficit seduction. You don't have a disorder. People don't have a disorder. All right? When it comes to and I maybe some do. I don't want to sound too black or white or too dismissive or too disrespectful to those who identify as having ADHD or any of its variants. But I see in the pattern of historical, sociopolitical, societal norms which act as conditioning on the human brain and the human spirit, a sort of, regulation trend towards the most limiting of attention spans, in order to perpetuate the same clusterfuck of bullshittery over and over and over again. And it works because we've conditioned the way the system brings us up. We sort of don't bother much with considering and contemplating things that are beyond a general sort of 4 to 5 year horizon. That might be a product of our education system. One of those things we wake up to it when we get really into the adulting game is, wow, how did we even live not realizing that the vast majority of people alive in our society don't have summer vacation? How did we just flagrantly waste that time away? But I digress. So, Trumptopia is the manifestation. Trumptopia is, as in this, what I use that term for those wondering, is the identifying of the transformation to the next level. Now that conditioning has rendered these results, these people are consciously and unconsciously escalating it to see how much they can get away with, how much they can ratchet up, how much they can normalize. And like I said, this is something that's happening at a conscious and unconscious level, because the the system of systems, the oppression itself, and the reaction to it go deeper than most people consciously give recognition to. But I digress, because I've rambled about that plenty. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out some of my other episodes, especially cross over to my Almost Daily Zencast, etc. So let's take a look at what's going on right now. I mean, week after week, month after month, it's debacle after conspiracy expose after resignation and or firing after just it's endless. It's like this vicious loop of escalating clusterfuck of fail, as I called it that way back in the early days of the election process. So in the mainstream media and on social media, there's a lot of debate about what the actual agenda is. And one of the things that everyone tries to do is flatten it down to one trajectory. And that's sort of why everyone just keeps arguing. There isn't one single clear through-line agenda, in my opinion. I could be wrong, and I'm not the only one who holds this opinion. But there is a sort of as above, so below sort of waveform of agendas that are in a current process of confluence, and like I keep suggesting, the agenda itself, if you can try to limit it to one statement, which is never wise, right? Because you flatten things that hard, then you miss a lot of detail. That's why black and white division wedge issues always work and keep working. I posted about that earlier this week on Facebook. Rachel Maddow. The news, I get the whole argument against mainstream media, but often either by accident or through divine grace or however you want to think about it, often the truth gets stated, even on the most blatantly abusive and corrupt of news outlets. And I'm looking at you, Fox News. But this one was I have plenty of examples littered throughout this podcast and my social media history, because occasionally people just say the truth or something so darn close to the truth that it's good enough, to get the idea through to other people. And Rachel Maddow was discussing the escalating madness, and I think it was specifically zooming in on the Kaepernick take a knee, disrespect the flag, hey, what about cops killing people issue? Because that's to me the progression that the divisive wedge issue has grown. Right? It started with the simple fact that there is escalating police brutality in the United States and always has been. Some, especially young people, but even some older people my age and beyond, are only just now sort of realizing that good morning, folks, racism never went away. And I don't mean to, those of us on this side who've always seen this clearly, don't mean to pick on anybody that's been, trying to fulfill the post-racial, post-racism manifesto, or try to be that, trying to live that. And that's, we always applaud that. That should always be applauded. And I'm not using the royal we. If I may interject a moment, a quick question. What the fuck is up with his his ever persistent use of the royal we? Where's he going with that? I think that's really weird. I've always thought it strange and found it uncomfortable when any president has used it, but I get when it might be done. And usually, I really have always enjoyed it when it's used correctly. Like if you're the leader of a democracy, then when you use the royal we, you should be speaking of something that which we, the people, yourself as as the democratically elected leader, acting as mouthpiece, might be elucidating, but that we the people want, we the people are doing, we the people are. You shouldn't be talking about yourself and your ever shrinking staff of people that you abuse and ignore half the time. in the royal we. I doubt he's listening. But if he is, and he, for some reason, appreciates what I'm saying, drop that. It's not doing you any favors on any front, Mr. President. I digress. The social conditioning is coming to a head. We're all familiar with that analogy of how if you drop a frog into a pot of boiling water, it's like, whoa, fuck this noise, I'm out of here, and, tries to get out. But if you put it in room temperature water and slowly, gently increase the heat, well, change that analogy, put the electorate in the boiling water, or, replace the water with political noise and division and wedge issues. Oh yeah, I was talking about Rachel Maddow on this eloquent thing. She says, the reason that this idea, and I think she may have been better served to use a phrasing about this utilization of wedge issues, I continue with her quote, persists, is because wedge issues work time and time again. The reason that wedge issues persist is because they work time and time again. They drive wedges between people. That, if anything, is the most important part of the multifaceted confluence of agendas that is being made manifest by Trump and his cadre of hangers-on, is critically important and should not be ignored. It gets lip service on all the media. We constantly discuss, or at least the talking heads constantly discuss for us on TV, on the radio, on the social media, on the magazines, about, the question of, are we too divided? And then we critically analyze that which is dividing us. But you'll note that with rare occasion do we ever get any kind of deep, meaningful, well-thought-out analysis of our options to solve the divide. Not in any serious way. It's always like a plug at the end about how we gotta live up to the human ideals and be better people, and all genuine things, but never anything further than that. As I like to indicate to people repeatedly, because this is metastructural, right? This is not something that Trump has brought to the foreground or is driving as part of his collection of puppet actors on the political entertainment stage. But for a long time, before Christ, we're talking, before Buddha. For those who don't know or don't remember, Buddha existed at least 500 years before Christ. At least, maybe more. And given that each of them, and this is totally a Zencast thing, but I'll try to keep it as short as possible, each of them did what they did and lived what they lived, died and was forgotten, and then became codified and became story and myth before the moment in history when we see way before the moment in history, both of them, where we, as people, as spiritual people, began to try to build spiritual cultural movements around them. And those that, for example, really quickly, the search for Jesus has always confounded everyone. And there's those who radically insist that there's no evidence, and there's those who say that there's thin but reasonable, believable evidence. I posit that it's not, that we will not find one person in the kingdom of in the Roman Empire's records, or under King Herod, etc., and in their whole right then in the historical period that we're looking, because that's only when, at that point, the Christos Enlightenment story was already an oral tradition, is my argument. We have a skewed and heavily altered model of the historical timeline there. What I argue happened in the actual time, the period that we identify historically as Jesus' life, is that some other person deeply understood, comprehended the Christos mystic revelatory, transcendental, like secret, dare I use the word, occult teachings, and achieved some either early onset set of realizations or maybe even full-blown enlightenment, but I doubt it. But his name must have been, someone else, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're looking for the wrong person in the wrong historical time period. And also, his name was not Jesus, and his name was not Christ. Those are labels used in those historical time frames that reference a couple of different things in a couple of different ways. But I digress. Our cultural conditioning, the core of our cultural conditioning, has been around for a really long time. And it's what we neglect the most when we debate or engage in the public discourse of how to react to the puppet show that we're watching in the political spectrum. At the core, division and confusion and the agitation of anger. I mean, it's almost so, it almost seems obvious that that's something Trump likes to do on the daily. On the daily. He's stoking 2 sides or 3 sides or 5 sides of some meaningless argument. And I say meaningless because while it might be important, and I don't mean to devalue or demean or dismiss anyone that has identity attachments to any of the more dramatic issues that we're being divided on, like DACA or healthcare. Let's take healthcare for a quick example. I'm not trying to diminish the value of the argument of those who are defending their rights in terms of healthcare access. Of course not. I stand with them on their side. What I'm saying is he's triggering argumentation along and sidetracking us along meaningless lines that do not achieve meaningful reform or change. And that simultaneously, especially from an esoteric point of view or a mystical point of view or a spiritual point of view, radically distract us from an even more important truth out there than, what is or is not to be declared a right in terms of our democratic systems. And that is that the prophets, whether you want to attach yourself to only one or to all of them, or whether you reject their teachings or the idea of their existence, what we can gather as a collective common thing about them all is that they taught some form of spiritual healing. And yes, we can point to all kinds of con artists out there. And what I'm suggesting to you is that the metastructural con job is to make it easy to have blind faith in attachment to any of these personality icons. But the blind faith is actually being paid tribute to whoever is alive right now and speaking to the podium, from the podium, in whatever, and where are they getting their opinions and their talking points, right? But not the actual teaching, because so many Christians reject the notion that Christ might have been a meditator, might have been aware of Buddhist teachings, and might, maybe, have been an early onset enlightenment, phenomena example, and that his ascension on high after the crucifixion might actually have been simultaneously a symbolic story about, because there's ancient examples of both before and after the historical time-framed Jesus of Catholic Orthodox. Sorry, all you non-denominational Christians. The Catholic Orthodoxy has the most hardcore, legitimate claim in verifiable factual terms of longest lineage back to the early days. And in their own history, you can see how badly manipulated the texts have been. But I digress. What does that have to do with Trumptopia? Religion, organized religion, in any flavor, in any form, and I don't mean to offend those who are currently associated with organized religions. I'm trying to help you elevate your situation out of their mind fuckery. But organized religion is the opposite of true spiritual enlightenment or gnosis or spiritual unconditional loving as practice. Okay, and it's easily seen in the absurdities expressed that are riddled with hate and xenophobia by, millions of Christians today. And the fact that, in Myanmar, this is not an isolated problem. Okay, that's the other thing. And it's not just that the NWO is trying to co-opt every country in the planet. It's always deeper than that, because it fundamentally boils down to the dis-ease or the ailment, the spiritual ailment of ego, which is a game that we're playing. But I digress. We keep getting distracted from stuff, and it keeps working. So my title of this episode from a pragmatic point, because I've rambled at length in crazy ways about my opinion based on research of what might be going on, right? And we'll come back to that again, I'm sure. But pragmatic terms, one of the things we need to do as a people is stop consuming what they are peddling us. And that's really hard to do, right? That's like walking up to a smoker you don't know on the street and say, hey, friend, I care about you, and what you need to do is start working on, like, not consuming that horrible toxic product. And that one hurts because I'm, as an individual, continue to struggle with my addiction to tobacco. But that's a whole nother episode, right? But my bottom line struggle there is that I simultaneously know that it's bad for me, and I'm fully aware of all of it about what cigarettes are, and that it's addiction, and I see that it's got an addictive hold on me, and I simultaneously still enjoy it aesthetically, and simultaneously understand that it's just part of the illusion. And I know that both intellectually and gnosisly, like I've experienced enough evidence to know that everything is just part of the illusion. So if it's just part of the illusion, why should I stress about it? Digressing. That sounds insane, right? We need to stop getting triggered. That's what's important about any of these issues. Whether it's smoking cigarettes or living through the chaos of post-Trump-topian politics, we need to stop getting triggered. Now, plenty of people are having this realization. It's nothing new. I'm not trying to say that I'm special. But it's seductive what it is. Like, I myself consider someone that tried to disengage. Like, I grew up deeply influenced by the Kill Your Television movement, which is a nonviolent movement of saying, hey, this is bad for you, get rid of it from your life. And I'm an avid television news journalism critic, or, passive consumer, possibly. Is it still fucking with me? It's entirely quite probable, yes, that it's still fucking with me in terms of my spiritual liberation. But am I someone whose I'm someone whose objectives were decided? I declared for myself several years ago that I wanted to create artwork on this boundary, in this liminal space, on this edge of going, hey, holy shit, I realized, fuck all this media, fuck all media, fuck all things that are ego trap. I got to get rid of them from my life. That's the next necessary thing. When anyone gets there, we ultimately have sort of a trifecta fork in the road. We can well-intentionally set out to do it but fail because of all of our inner failings. We can set out to do it and succeed in whatever ways our individual path of success plays out. And we can sort of linger in the middle ground for whatever reasons, because we want to go, like, for example, to move on to a less negative thing, I've long known that I ought to, should, and probably will enjoy reducing my meat consumption and becoming, ultimately, at whatever pace it takes me, a vegetarian. Have I initiated that? No. Does that make me a terrible Buddhist? Sure, if you're judging me, but are Buddhists supposed to judge each other? No. Catch-22 right there, right? But digressing. You see the sort of point I'm trying to make. How do we apply that to this politics? Well, literally on a day-to-day basis is this sort of... We see a meta pattern going on, right? Week after week, it's some new repackaging of essentially the same set of bullshit. Are you shocked and amazed that that the director of the HHS, what's his name, Price? Is it Price? Isn't it funny that his name is associated with money? Or is it Rice? I'm terrible. I had it up on a screen and then I turned off all my screens. Anyone that's shocked and amazed that he was doing that is not paying close enough attention. No offense. You're just not. This is par for the course. Every week, some crazy... the very existence of Mar-a-Lago as a private social club for the wealthy elite, people who can pocket change afford the $200,000 entry fee, and then whatever the monthly yearly must be, God knows. $200,000. The vast majority of us never see that as a working wage on a yearly basis. The vast majority of human beings on the planet will never see that amount of money in any way, shape, or form. And so this elite segment of our society has unconstitutional and probably illegal access to the President of the United States. And we're all just standing around shocked and awe and debating about whether or not, he's racist. Because I get that's what I mean by we got to stop letting him trigger us. Half the shit he says is just trigger. And then there's almost no follow-through. Except for when he doubles down on it. But so what? We know he's going to double down. Who gives a shit? Why get triggered by it? As a society, if we want to survive the effects of what, as symptomology, Trumptopian people, no offense, Trumptopians, those of you who blind faith adore this man because of whatever reasoning you found to adore this man, you're drunk on the Kool-Aid, yo. But then again, that is also true of anyone who blind faith adores anyone in politics. Always question people in power because power corrupts absolutely. And in fact, the whole lesson is to find a way to self-organize our societies in such a way that we don't artificially generate power for people to be drawn towards, addicted to, and abused by and with and through and abuse others. That's the lesson. The key, as I keep idiotically posting it on social media platforms, is radical self-liberation from ideological constructs, a reconnection to nature, and a communion with the living womb that is our actual... It's not a place, it's an entity, it's a living thing which we are simultaneously a part of and also, living through the experience of individuation away from. We have to stop neglecting those relationships in order to solve the problems that we create in this echo chamber of ego. So, pragmatically speaking, the first step, how do you achieve it? The very first step to be effective, whatever your cause has been, if you're listening and you have a cause, and you're a part of the resistance, this show is especially for you. If you're a Trumptopian fan on the fringe, starting to really wonder and question, this show is for you. If you're a hardcore Trumptopian, this show is for you to hate on, so that it serves as a mirror of your hate to you until you realize what the fuck you're doing. But that all sounds self-aggrandizing. I'm here speaking... I'm trying to really identify my audience so that if you know who fits into those buckets, you might share it along. And I'm not saying I'm the solution or that my show is the solution. I'm about to share with you what I and many, many others out there in this world humbly think the solution is. engaging in the practice of self-liberation from all ideological constructs of the mind through unconditional love, forgiveness, and compassion, all of which are not just fancy ideals, but manifest energies, which translate into manifest action. They are literally energetic, spiritual, and physical tools, which we have been trained to ignore and taught to ridicule and belittle. In my entire adult life, as I've explored different ways and different platforms available to me as a non-entity, as a nobody important, to express my thoughts on all of these issues, I've often been retaliated against with an argument, for love's non-existence, lack of efficacy or of affectivity, that it doesn't do anything, doesn't change anything. That's the brainwashing that we have to help our brothers and sisters liberate themselves from. Okay, but so much for shorter episodes, folks. I really set out for season 2 to try to do shorter episodes, but either I go down simultaneously, related rabbit holes, or I just lose track of time. To get started, one must intellectually, emotionally, and bodily go through a process of self-discovery or self-rediscovery, healing, and forgiveness and acceptance before we can move on to facilitating others. And some of the simplest steps are just the initiation of new habits focused around, and I hate to sound trite, but positive thinking and positive action. Emphasis on the word action, rather than negative thinking and negative action. Right? We cannot organize our efforts of resistance around reactionary principles. Right? And at the personal level, that has to start with a deep commitment to self-investigation, to self-healing, to self-love, which we often neglect because we've been conditioned to for not only for all of our lives as individuals, but for centuries and centuries and centuries as a collective. I've tried to share some of my own and some of my favorite other other creators or the artists' examples of simple, direct practices. But one of the first ones is to intellectually recognize, and this is a hard one, folks, this is a hard one, but I'm trying to deliver on real and effective advice here, right? Because we live in an era where the entirety of our political spectrum is about triggering us, dividing us, and getting us to argue, and it's working. Even well-intentioned, loving, progressive, open-minded, thoughtful people that want to love other people and help them are caught up in argumentation, which is the slippery slope, the ego seduction, ego trap path towards hate. And hate leads to violence, and violence leads to propagating this negative spiral of ego seduction away from enlightenment. So, one of the simplest, most effective, and most challenging first steps that I humbly suggest to you, my friends, and to your friends, is that if you've been busy hating Trump, hating who he was elected by, hating, insert people's names here, the simplest thing you can do to contribute towards the solution, the real solution, is to stop hating them, to choose to stop hating them. And the only way I know to effectively really achieve that in a genuine, I'm not just bullshitting myself intellectually kind of way, is to go through the very, very difficult process of forgiveness. And I know that that is, to some people, unimaginable, and that suggesting it is an affront to their intelligence, quote unquote. But the fact that you're reacting with anger and negativity, and how is that reaction? How is the withholding of forgiveness to those in power and those corrupted by evil, which we claim to want to overcome? Killing them does nothing. Killing them makes us evil, right? I see this ever-increasing speculation about, if not outright call for bloody revolution, and that's insane to me. That never has solved the problem. If it could have, would have, should have, then all of our world would be free and utopia by now, because we've had countless, hundreds of thousands of revolutions throughout human history. And while it may have temporarily solved the most acute of the symptoms of the oppression at that historical juncture, it clearly didn't solve the overriding metastructural, species-wide, and, I argue, spiritual problem, did it? So step one, we have to remember and remind each other that we need to choose to refuse to hate. We need to refuse to hate Donald Trump. We need to refuse to hate the lobbyists and lawyers and profiteers and warmongers that he's refilling the swamp with. We need to refuse to hate the closed-minded, bigoted extremists of the alt-right. We need to refuse to hate the Nazis that we're all having so much fun talking about punching. I'm not generally an absolutist, but in my life and in my research and in my experience and in my attempt to commune with nature, I have come to the conclusion that one of the few places in the universe where there is a hard line is violence. That two wrongs do not make a right. That's why they brainwash us with propaganda. That's why they come up with the statist patriotism, ideological warrior worship of our soldiers and our troops. That's why, no offense, troops, you guys, you put yourself on the line. I have no disrespect for any individual. I'm talking about the systematic way in which our own selves have chosen to oppress and profiteer on our own selves, because we are all one in this illusion of individuality. We are all one in this dream of nonsense and of ego trap. Okay? And no matter how much you want to solve the problem, if you are clinging to hate in your heart, if you are contemplating hate-filled thinking in your mind, if you are spewing hate-filled language through your mouth, if you are reprogramming or consuming more hate speech with your eyes and ears, you are not contributing to the solution. You are transforming yourself into part of the problem. And I don't say that to you with anger. I don't say that to you with hate. I say that to you, to anyone listening, with unconditional love. With absolute forgiveness. And I know that that's so hard, because there's a lot of people that we may not want to forgive. I use the royal we here in this instance because I understand. I have withheld forgiveness, both from individuals in my real life and individuals out there in the world, in the life of the global stage. Withholding forgiveness only damages you. It does absolutely nothing to the person that you are withholding forgiveness from, unless they are torturing themselves out of longing for an attachment to your forgiveness that you are withholding. And then you're creating a double loop of injuring yourselves. Now imagine or understand or comprehend that we have a relationship with our politicians, that we do the same sort of magic around, whether we realize it or not. Well, it's that time again. I've got less than 4 minutes in today's episode since I'm going full bore. I felt good about today's episode, though. Although I combine themes from all over the place. So, pragmatically speaking, my friends, that's the very first. I humbly suggest this to you, my fellow listeners, because I worry about all y'all. I only see a small sliver of the world's population through my social media window. But I've tried to curate and collect a diverse range of people. I've tried to avoid creating my own echo chamber. Obviously, I'm not 100% successful. I'm not saying that I've done some magical thing, except that it is magical to me. I choose to make it magical. A quick, blow your mind thing. In today's times, in postmodern context, most people don't understand what is sacred. Sacred is not defined by any institution. Sacred is not defined by some personified God that's out there waiting to judge you about whether or not you cherish this sacred, silly thing. Sacred is defined by you. Not for anyone else other than you. Okay? What is sacred to you, I don't need to give a shit about. Except for that it deserves to be respected as it is sacred to you. Now, what is sacred to you, I don't need shoved down my throat. But if it is truly worthy of being sacred to you, it might very well be worthy of being sacred to me. And that's where we get into the golden rule formula of how divinity really functions in the universe. You have the ability to make things sacred. Now, if you choose profane things and try to make them sacred, you're going to have a belly full of bullshit in your life and a belly full of pain and karmic disturbance, because that ain't the lesson. The lesson is simple. Love. Not romantic love. Not the love of objects. Not the love of power. Not the love of, not the liking of something for its value. But preconditional, unconditional, radical, transformative, unadulterated, cosmic love. You are a little living manufacturing antenna of it, and they don't want you to know that. Because simultaneously you can produce hate. Okay? So, with all respect, as I got 1 minute and 22 seconds left, my message, if there's one thing you take away from my entire project, it's this. And I've said it a bunch of different ways. To quote Bob Marley, how does the quote go? I wish I had it up on the screen. But there has to be a revolution of the mind, and I would add body and spirit before the revolution can play out in the streets. And you are at the center of it. They don't want you to know how powerful you can be if you just broadcast love. Pragmatically, what would that do to our politics? It would infuse them with love. How do you think they became corrupt? They were infused with something other than love, because energies are communicable. More on that in other segments. Thanks for listening. May peace, love, and grooviness be with you. Please like, share, and comment, send your questions, etc. Till next time.